Hey guys, Tarke here, and I haven't got any gameplay, but I have made this demonstration of how my build will function at Echoes of the Atlas. I'll just briefly explain how the build will function, then I'll show you everything in Path of Building, and there won't be any gameplay if you're someone who wants gameplay. Sorry. So, this is a 100% accurate recreation of fighting up to 10 bosses in the Maven arena. So you can see we're in the Atlas, we've got a beautifully created starry background. This is the arena. We have a nice little Saboteur who's dropped a Sigil of Power, that's the blue circle. The red represents enemies. And then he threw a lightning trap with Sniper's Mark, and now everything is circles. If you remember my previous video, this is a league all about circles. I was like, how many circles could I realistically fit into Circle League? So with that out of the way, let's get into it. So this is a mind over matter, maybe agnostic, I'm not too sure yet, I'd have to decide, lightning trap Saboteur. This is an Archmage, but you basically play it as if it was Archmage. The reason this isn't Archmage is Archmage doesn't work with traps. However, this is with Cirrus on, stuff ticked, but it's all realistic, only a 15% shock, Chill Ignite, Blind, Crit Chance Lucky, with one brand up, we'll explain that later, max stages of Sigil of Power and Wave of Conviction exposure, and then Power and Frenzy charges, which we do get. So it's stuff ticked, but nothing unreasonably so. And you're like, okay, what's 400k? That's not that great. It's actually very inaccurate. So that's 400k per lightning trap, and we throw 3 lightning traps at once. So that is actually 1.2 mil. And then that doesn't factor in the damage we get from Perfect Crime. It doesn't factor in the chance for traps to re-trigger. So you're looking at like a base like 1.2 mil with good gear, not min-maxed gear. And I'll explain all of that later. But to first off just explain the core function of the build and the main interactions, what's important. The main interaction is abusing the added effectiveness of 170% to flat damage on Lightning Trap. Lightning Trap is one of the best map clear skills in the game, has very good coverage, hence my amazing drawing, and it has very good scaling of effective damage. So for links, you use Lightning Trap, Cluster Traps, Pierce, because we don't get Pierce from the tree, and you want as much Pierce as possible for really crazy fights in Ritual and Echoes. Lightning Penetration, Trap and Mind Damage, and then Control Destruction as your 6th. You could drop Control Destruction for something else, but you can see our crit chance is fine with it, so we're fine with Control Destruction. So then you want to use Arcane Cloak and Sigil of Power, which is when you get the vast majority of your power with Sniper's Mark. So Sniper's Mark gives cursed enemies take increased damage from projectile hits, and then projectiles which hit cursed enemies split towards 5 additional targets, hence this. So yeah, the whole idea is we're throwing lightning traps which cover the screen anyway, then Sniper's Mark is happening on top of it, and then we've got traps rearming, and then high throwing speeds, and it just circles within circles within circles, basically. Sigil of Power is very strong. This came out 1 or 2 leagues ago. Basically, you make a giant rune on the floor, which grants a buff to you and allies in the area for its duration. It gains stages as you spend mana within the area, making the buff more powerful, and you can only have 1 sigil up at once. So it gains a stage when you spend a total of 461 mana, throwing traps count. And you get some increased mana costs of skulls while you're in the area. Enemies deal up to 20% less damage while at maximum stages, and it grants up to 150 added lightning damage per stage. So you can see that this alone gives us quite a big chunk of damage, and also gives us a big chunk of mitigation from that 20% damage reduction. Arcane Cloak is the real heavy hitter. So Arcane Cloak is like half of our damage, pretty much. So Arcane Cloak gives 65% of our mana goes bye-bye. Then 75% of the damage from hits is taken from the buff for life or energy shield. Buff can take damage equal to the mana spent, and then it grants lightning damage equal to 15% of the mana spent. We've got 6.7k mana, so that's like a lot. This is a big thing. I don't run increased duration on it because we want it to come off cooldown as quickly as possible, and it doesn't come off cooldown during its duration. So we want the effects to end as quickly as possible so we can keep cycling it, because every time you press Arcane Cloak, thanks to Dynamo, you recover 20% of your mana over 1 second when you use a guard skill. So for map clear, you don't worry about Sigil of Power, but for bossing, the idea is you drop the thing, you throw the traps, and the reason why this is particularly synergistic with traps is traps can pre-lay damage. So if you've got a cap of 24 traps, you can throw 24 traps, then activate the boss. What you can do is you can do Sigil of Power, pre-ramp your traps, but while you're doing that, you're also getting your Sigil to max strength, and then you enter the boss right away. So all the annoying setup, you get to skip completely, and then just have like ridiculous burst, and it just gets really silly. So it's a really strong combination of mechanics. Otherwise, the only other things that are really going on, we use the buffed up bear trap, which now gives, this has actually been buffed to 25%, so the damage is higher. And it's bear trap, increased duration, charge traps, and we've got advanced traps in the gloves that this is linked to. Vulgrace, because I like it as defensive. If you'd rather, you could run Val RF if you wanted higher numbers. And then in a trigger weapon, you want Sniper's Mark just to automate the curse. Alternatively, you can self-cast it. I have an open socket there. Wave of Conviction for exposure, and Wintertide Brand. The Wintertide Brand I'll explain later on, but it is important. And then for auras, we run just Clarity and Vitality. We don't run Skitterbots. It's a waste of a mana reservation since we shock anyway from our Lightning Trap. We don't need the shocking aspect of the Skitterbots. And for 35% mana reservation, only getting 10% trap damage isn't that strong, and it's just too much mana to sacrifice. So yeah, that's why we're running that. So the reason why we need to run the Wintertide, you get some flat cold damage to spells, and you get some flat... You need somewhere some flat fire and some flat cold to activate everything you want on Explosive Expert. So Explosive Expert grants 40 crit multi against burning enemies, 80% crit chance against shocked enemies, 10% pen against chilled enemies. So if you have 1 fire damage and you crit, you'll apply an Ignite. So you need 1 fire damage somewhere on your gear. Will be shocking naturally because Lightning Trap has a high chance to shock. The 10% pen against chilled enemies. So against normal enemies, against normal trash, just having a little bit of cold damage with a little buff scaling, that they'll naturally get chilled. The Wintertide Brand is in the trigger wand just to guarantee chill on bosses. You could alternatively use Creeping Frost, which has good duration, good uptime. The only reason I decided to use Wintertide over Creeping Frost is you might actually die to Reflect with Creeping Frost because it hits, whereas Wintertide doesn't hit, so it doesn't impact you negatively in any way. Otherwise, we're using the buffed up Perfect Crime, which, as I said earlier, now gives 25% chance of traps to re-trigger, basically chance for your trap to happen again. It goes off, it comes up, then it goes off again. It's also not factoring the increased damage we get for each trap. So when you throw 3 traps, that's just 8% increased damage. When you pre-lay 24 traps, that's 240% increased damage. Perfect Crime is very strong for pre-laying on bosses. The reduced mana cost is just nice. We should still be fine getting our Sigil of Power going. We spend 59 mana per throw, and that's without Forethought. And if we wanted to, we could take Forethought to up the mana cost a little bit. Just to bump it, and we could drop these 2 nodes. But we should be fine to still ramp up the Sigil of Power. Fine. And then Born in the Shadows gives Cannot Be Blinded, which is whatever, but 10% reduced damage taken from blinded enemies. Nearby enemies are blinded, and blind enemies on hit. And again, we have incredible off-screening, so everything will always be blinded. So we actually have quite a lot of damage mitigation through the 10% reduction from blind, the 20% from Sigil of Power. I don't like running Shield Charge, but if you do like running Shield Charge, you can then also add Shield Charge Fortify into the mix. And yeah, you actually end up with a lot of mitigation with incredible sustain. I'm not sure if I want to do Agnostic or not. I need to just try it out because I haven't done an Agnostic Trapper before. But even just as is, you're like, oh, it's only 4k life, Tarke, that's terrible. The gear isn't that min-max in terms of life, but that's 4k life with 6k mind over matter. If you have the Cloak of Defiance, 40% mind over matter, with a decent chunk of energy shield on top of that. And then these massive absorbs coming in from the Arcane Cloak, then everything's blinded, and there's actually like quite a lot of defensive mitigation going on there. And in terms of boss sustain, your boss sustain is very good because you've got very good mana sustain. If you go agnostic, I don't know how great the boss sustain will be. That's the main thing I'm a bit iffy about. Without agnostic, you will never run out of mana. Like, you will never run out of mana. Got 1.3k mana regen. That's not factoring in mana floss and stuff. Like, you take the mana nodes basically. into the gear, like what gear do you need to actually make this whole thing work? And this is where a lot more synergies kind of like go into one another. So, as I said, you basically gear it as if you're playing an Archmage build. We get so much just flat damage scaling. We don't really care about flat lightning or like plus level of lightning gems. It's just not very efficient. You just want percent, so you just like percent spell damage, get your crit chance as high as you can, and then as much mana as you can get. Basically, all the rare items I only put tier 3 rolls on because I'm most likely playing SSF or maybe a private league. I haven't decided yet. And I always get frustrated when people do like perfect mirror tier league start stuff. So yeah, you just use 2 sets of wands. If you want a little bit more defense, drop one of the wands for a shield, because then you gain life. Gaining the life isn't actually that great though, because you'll have less mana, you'll have less damage, quite a lot less damage, in fact. And if you manage to get like a really cool shape of shield with a bunch of like spell block and stuff, then maybe, but otherwise I'm just not really sure. Crown of the Inward Eye is fairly easy to get. You just need to farm Cirrus, and it gives a pretty good chunk of damage because of Transfiguration of Mind. Basically increases to mana, translate to increased damage at 30% of its value. We have 240% mana from Tree. I think with gear we probably have about 300%, so it's like roughly 100% increased damage on a helmet, which also gives percent life, percent mana, so that's pretty good. For body armor, Cloak of Defiance is just the best chest, hands down. Mana, extra MoM, mana regen, and it saves you 1 skill point, because when you get the Cloak of Defiance, you get to drop this 1 point on the tree. For gloves, you don't really care that much. You just want life mana. Ideally, you get socketed gems followed by level 20 advanced traps. That means you need shaper gloves. The reason why you want that one mod is it just gives you global trap throwing speed, which is just very nice quality of life. And it then means that you can have both advanced traps and charge traps on your bear trap, both of which give trap throwing speed, so it makes throwing the bear trap less obnoxious. For boots, there is a unique option, but I haven't included it here because I'm almost definitely not going to get an SF. I will talk about it. But yeah, just life mana, movement speed. Important things to note when it comes to trap builds. Traps killing enemies doesn't count as you killing enemies. Likewise, traps critting doesn't count as you critting. So they're very powerful offensive enchants. You can get boots which have 100% uptime. So damage pen 10% if you haven't killed recently. You never kill, only your traps will kill. The only thing in my gear that could maybe ruin that would be my Trigger, Wave of Conviction, and Wintertide brand. The damage they grant, though, is better than the damage on the boot, so you just kind of accept it, and this will always be active during bosses. And if you don't want the inconsistency of like the spiky damage, swap this out for 70% increased mana regen if you've used a skill recently. Throwing a trap counts as using a skill. Amulet Itzuri's Foible is hands down the best. You want to allocate Master Sapper, which is this node here. This will give you trap damage, trap trigger AoE, 2 additional traps, so increasing the maximum you can have out at once, and then chance to gain Frenzy Charge generation. Until you get that Anoint, I would run Charge Traps instead of Control Destruction as your sick flank. It will give you really nice quality of life through the increased trap throwing speed. It gives you a good chunk of damage. And yeah, I think it's something like 25% increased damage compared to 38%, so it's still less damage than Control Destruction, but the trap throwing speed, quality of life, in the early, like, you won't need to make that swap till very, very late game, so by the time you can do that swap, you've probably got the Anoint saved up, if that makes sense. It makes sense to me. Dream Frag. I like Dream Frag. You don't have to run it though. The thing which I like about Dream Frag, it gives you cannot be frozen, cannot be chilled, and we already have Ignite and Shock Immune from being Sab, so that basically covers all of your bases, and it gives you just a really good chunk of mana regen early, and it has resists. If you don't want to run it, you can just run a Rare Ring instead. It is worth noting that we have this node, Essence Extraction, which is Mana Flask gain charged every 3 seconds and remove a random elemental ailment when you use a Mana Flask. You're like, well, if you have this Tarke and you're immune to Ignite and Shock, then your Mana Flask will always remove Freeze. Why do you need Freeze removal? Because I still want to be chill immune. Also, it's just, I had one Mind of a Matter Lightning Trap that die in hardcore because I had Freeze removal on my Mana Flask, and then I just ran out of charges because I spammed it too hard on a boss. And yeah, it just makes me feel bad. This is still good though, because this will remove stuff like Scorched, Brittle, and Sapped still. And when you have all of your normal elemental bases covered, this means that whenever you press a mana flask, it will remove Scorched, Brittle, or Sapped if you have one of those three up on your character. So it's still like doing work. Otherwise, just again, life mana. You'll notice I randomly shove lightning res on some slots. You just cap the res yourself. The reason I did that just was to see how much damage a Wise Oak would give with lightning damage as my highest resistance. For Belt, this is actually quite important. If you use Essence of Zeal, they grant trap throwing speed, and you can then craft at the bench trap throwing speed on top. You can stack the mods. So you're going to look for a either a Shaper Belt, because Shaper Belts give mana recovery, or just a Stygian Vise early on, and you just throw Essence of Zeals into them until you hit trap throwing speed, life mana, and then you craft the other trap throwing speed on there, and then you're set. If you could get any flask mods, great, but then that's like quite a difficult item to craft. This is the one spot where I think it's the easiest to get the flat fire damage, flat cold damage you need. Otherwise, you can just get flat fire, flat cold anywhere on your wands, either because, again, we don't really care about getting flat lightning to attack because we already have so much. You just want that little bit of cold to get the chilling and the shattering for map clear, and the fire just to enable the 40% crit multi. So basically, think of that one line, that fire damage as 40 crit multi is basically what that says. I'll explain these unique jewels. So you don't need 4 hair triggers. You definitely don't want 4 of them. The reason why I just included 4 is it's, again, I don't like it when people say this was my league starter build, run these like triple crit multi jewels. It's unrealistic. You're going to want to run 1, maybe 2 hair triggers, and any jewel you have will give you at least 25% increased damage. So yeah, I just shoved 4 in there just because it's easy to work out. It also keeps the life and mana unrealistic than being like, oh, use this perfect life mana double crit multi-jewel. It's just not realistic for League Start. The other good thing about hair triggers is they're very easy to corrupt, so stuff like corrupting blood immune, or like penetration, or reducing reservation, or anything like that. The reason why hair triggers are great is they give increased trap trigger area of effect. You're going to want some of that because we don't take chain reaction, and we don't take unstable munitions. So it's basically just making it reliably that whenever you throw your lightning traps, they all explode. And also, because of the rearm mechanic, 25% chance for traps to trigger an additional time doesn't do what you think it would do. It doesn't do it twice. It triggers, and then it rearms, and it has to be triggered again. So having the additional trigger area of effect means that it will nearly always re-trigger on the second time round. Another really good just starter jewel that you can go for is unstable munitions, I believe it's called. Unstable payload, that's the one. It's a very good like just starter jewel. It gives 8 to 12% chance of traps to trigger again. Assuming you've got enough trap trigger radius, it's effectively like you could argue 12% more damage. You would never use it as an end game setup, but it's just a very good starter budget setup to get a large chunk of damage. In terms of flask, you 100% want to run an enduring eternal mana flask of staunching, because we've got all of that elemental stuff covered already. Yeah, you just enduring means it's always active. It's just giving you extra mana sustain. If you're not going agnostic, you might be able to drop the mana flask. If you're going agnostic, 100% you need the mana flask. You need a diamond flask for the lucky crits, and you need a quicksilver adrenaline. You then have 2 open flask slots to do with what you want. You could go damage flasks. Wise Oak, Serious Promise would be cheap early ones. You could go for a Cinder Swallow, since you do ignite and it's damage. You could go for Bottled Faith, but obviously that's unrealistic for League Start. You could also just go for straight up just defensive utilities. The main ones that stand out to me would be a Quartz Flask for phasing, dodge, and spell dodge. And then probably either a Granite or a Basalt, since we're not stacking like dodge or evasion or anything. You could also just go for a Jade Flask to, you know, combo well with the blind. So maybe I'd go Quartz, Jade. One thing worth noting about the gearing, I just plugged in ES gear because I'm not sure what I'm going to do about Agnostic. I'm going to test out Agnostic and see how I feel about it. In the case of you going Agnostic, your energy shield is 0. You don't want pure ES gear. You want hybrid. You want armor ES or evasion ES. You still need to have energy shield somewhere though, because you can only roll life and mana on energy shield gear. So if you were to roll, like for example, pure evasion armor, you can't get mana on that. So your loot filters for this build have all the wands enabled, have the good spellcaster dagger bases enabled, have the good shields, which give spell damage, and then pick between having also the armor ES shields or evasion ES shields if you want to use a shield. If you don't use a shield, don't have those on your loot filter. Have the top 2 ES spaces pure, the top 2 armor ES spaces, and the top 2 evasion ES spaces pure. For chancing, you're going to want to chant lacquered garbs and power amulets. For SSF, chancing them is basically the way you get them, unless you get very lucky from Ritual just giving them to you. And even in Trade League, these are both high ticket items, so if you can chance your way into it, you may as well. Otherwise, like, really, the Cloak Advance is really the only, like, hard to get items about this build. And even without them, you can see you still have 5k mana. You still have 350k damage. Crown of the Inward Eye gets cheap very, very quickly. Dream Fragments is a very cheap pickup. And everything else in this build is entirely budget. Those are basically your 2 chase items. Basically, just run a Tabula until you can afford Cloak. And then just get life, mana, like crit multi or whatever on your Ami. If you were to push this build past level 96, if you were to try and like push it towards 100, a couple of interesting options you could go for. You could just get more mana nodes. You could come up for Throat Seeker, which is really nice damage. It's like 3.5 per point, which is very good. The reason why it's not included is I didn't want to give people level 100 League Starter tree, because I mean, let's be real. You can also very easily cut 2-point jewels early on. You can also cut a couple of fluff nodes. Funnily enough, you could probably cut the 5% life nodes. If you go Agnostic especially, a lot of people play Agnostic with like 3.5k life, which sounds ridiculously low, but it really isn't, because you've got so much mana shenanigans going on that it kind of works out. If you're worried about the life being low, really don't be, because you can quite easily, if you were to take out these jewels and replace them with like life and mana jewels, whoops, and then instead of having tier 3 life rolls, you had tier 2, tier 1 life rolls, you're then looking at like 5.5k life, and then if you did the same with the mana, it'd be like 5.5k life, like 8k mana. So yeah, you'd be completely fine. Especially if you then were to swap out the opal for a shield, like we were already at like 5k life, so you can kind of get what's going on there. I will do my best to update my like videos as I'm playing through the league. Again, because of my health problems, I can't stream the league start, and also I am having a bunch of procedures, so this will probably be the last video you see before league start, because tomorrow I'm having a bunch of cables put inside me. So I probably won't feel like doing videos with cables everywhere, but yes. I'm Tarke. If you've played this kind of build before... Oh, I forgot to mention the one thing. These boots. These boots are great if you can get your hands on them. They give you Onslaught. They give you 20% dodge, 20% spell dodge. You do lose 464 mana regen, but doesn't matter. Like, if you're doing the non-agnostic route, it especially doesn't matter, because you still have like 900 flat mana regen, which is ridiculous. If you do the agnostic stuff, then yeah, it might be a bit rough. And again, all of these numbers are without the mana flask active, by the way. And if you want to pump the mana recovery even further, you can get stuff like this, which gives total mana recovery during any mana flask effect, also gives a flask effect, and you can get a little bit more mana regen there. And if you wonder why I take like this node, it's because it gives mana regen. Basically, if it gives mana, it's good. If it gives mana regen, it's good. These two nodes aren't that great, because these just give mana. Traps kill, not us, so we don't get the recover % mana on kill, sadly. We don't need the attack leech because we don't attack. And this is okay because it gives us a little bit of flat mana, but again, the mana gained on kill doesn't do anything for us. For leveling, just go through here, rush MoM, get all the mana stuff, get crit at like level 80 or something. Easy sailing. I've practiced this build before, it's good. Looking forward to trying this variant of it. I played a lot of Lightning Trap, I played a lot of traps, but I haven't done a mind over matter Lightning Trapper in years, and I've never done a mind over matter trapper since the introduction of Arcane Cloak and Sigil of Power, so I'm very much looking forward to it. I'm Tarke, have a good day, best of luck with Ritual, watch your league starter by the way, bye bye.